The search for a replacement. Lawmakers urge the president to steer clear of politics as he considers a new FBI director. Faith and politics.
Because in America, we don't worship government, we worship God.
President Trump addresses grads at the nation's largest Christian college. Special books by special kids. One teacher's mission to help children with special needs share their story. And the Pope in Fatima. An in-depth look at the historic pilgrimage for Pope Francis as he declares 2 children saints. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, May 15th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump says the work is on to find the nation's next FBI director. He's calling for a replacement for ousted Director James Comey as soon as possible. But lawmakers on the Hill are urging the president to steer clear of appointing any politicians. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby has more from the White House. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. President Trump says the search for a new FBI director is moving rapidly, and a decision could come as early as this week. This as the White House counters more criticism over the timing of Comey's firing.
The developments of the past week, very bothersome, very disturbing to me.
James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, the latest to criticize President Trump's decision to fire James Comey. He says U.S. institutions are under attack.
Both externally, and that's the big news here, is the Russian interference in our election system. And I think as well our institutions are under assault internally.
But UN Ambassador Nikki Haley says President Trump had every right to fire Comey, and some conservatives, including John Malcolm, think the president made the right call.
Within the FBI, you had people who believed that Director Comey was simply too political.
And Malcolm says the timing of the decision is unremarkable.
If the goal here was to try to stop an ongoing investigation into wrongdoing by the Trump administration, I predict that it won't work.
Democrats and a handful of Republicans are still calling for a special prosecutor to look into Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
To have that special prosecutor, people would breathe a sigh of relief because then there would be a real independent person overlooking the FBI director.
Senator Chuck Schumer now defending Comey, even though he said he had lost confidence in the FBI director in November. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will brief the Senate Thursday. Rosenstein has become the focus of much attention since President Trump based his decision in part on a memo drafted by Rosenstein. He'll be answering questions about that memo and the circumstances surrounding Comey's dismissal. Lauren?
President Trump reportedly plans to nominate Callista Gingrich as U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. She is described as a devout Catholic who sings in the choir at the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in Washington. Callista is married to former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, a Catholic convert who supported Donald Trump during the presidential campaign. The Trump administration is implementing his executive order to protect life. It's an extension of the so-called Mexico City policy, which stops U.S. taxpayer money from funding overseas abortions. Pro-life groups applaud the move. The president of the Susan B. Anthony list says by modernizing this important policy and expanding it to include $8.8 billion in foreign aid, President Trump is continuing Ronald Reagan's pro-life legacy. President Trump talks about the importance of faith at the nation's largest Christian college, Liberty University. He urges graduates to follow their convictions and get ready to face criticism. Correspondent Jason Calvi takes us to President Trump's first commencement address.
President Trump tells graduates at Liberty University as long as he's president, no one's going to stop them from practicing their faith.
When the founders wrote the Declaration of Independence, they invoked our Creator 4 times. Because in America, we don't worship government, we worship God.
The school's president, Jerry Falwell Jr., was one of candidate Trump's earliest Christian supporters.
And in acknowledgement of his bold leadership of our nation.
Falwell says no other president has done more for evangelicals in 4 months than President Trump.
O Lord, our Lord.
Trump says so much has changed since he last visited campus a year ago. Now he's celebrating his victory and their graduation.
I'm guessing there are some people here today who thought that either one of those things, either one, would really require major help from God. Do we agree?
He won 80% of the white evangelical vote, including some members of the Larry and Kathy White family in Lynchburg, Virginia, where the campus is located.
I want to support the role that he plays, the job that he's doing. I want him to be a good representation of America. I mean, I could cry, but I love this country.
I don't think there's ever going to be any one time where I'm like, oh, okay, shouldn't have voted for him. He was not the hero I thought he was. Like, he wasn't a hero to begin with. I didn't actually vote for him.
A recent Pew poll finds 3/4 of white evangelicals approve of the president's job performance. And back to the graduation, the president tells the grads the future belongs to people who follow their heart, no matter what the critics say. Lauren?
It's a really busy graduation season. This was his first. What's next for him?
He's going to be delivering the commencement address at the Coast Guard Academy this Wednesday. Then Vice President Mike Pence is returning to his home state of Indiana this Sunday for the commencement. And
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame,
yeah,
exactly.
It had to be. If you're in Indiana, you're in South Bend. All right, Jason Calvi, thank you so much for that report. Well, the president is meeting with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi at the White House.
Great honor to have Sheikh Mohammed with us today.
It's their first face-to-face meeting since President Trump took office. He called Sheikh Mohammed a very special person who loves his country and the U.S. The trip comes days before the president travels to Saudi Arabia as part of his four-country foreign trip, which includes a stop at the Vatican. Judges consider if President Trump's revised travel order is legal. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Seattle heard arguments today. The White House wants the court to overturn an injunction issued by a federal judge in Hawaii. No word on when the court might rule. Some legal experts predict the matter will end up at the Supreme Court. North Korea claims a major success after the launch of a new ballistic missile. The country claims this weekend's test proves it can put a large nuclear warhead on a missile. Pyongyang is also saying it's capable of striking the mainland of the U.S. and Pacific holdings. There is no independent evidence to support those claims. The Trump administration has called the country's nuclear efforts unacceptable. The worldwide ransomware cyber attack spread to thousands of new computers this morning as people across Asia signed on for work. More than 150 countries have been hit in what's being called an unprecedented assault.
We've seen much more complex things before, but what's new is the use of a worm to actually propagate through systems. This has led to a far greater uptake of the malware across systems and as a consequence has caused significantly more problems.
The U.S. Homeland Security Advisor says the attack sends an urgent call for collective action by governments throughout the world. Police in Italy arrest nearly 70 people, including a priest and the head of a Catholic volunteer group. They are accused of working with a major mafia clan that skimmed millions of dollars in public funds intended for one of Italy's largest migrant welcome centers. Investigators say about $39 million were stolen between 2006 and 2015. Pope Francis says he wants to find common ground with President Trump and work for peace. The two are scheduled to meet during Trump's first overseas trip as president next week. The Holy Father says he will sincerely listen to President Trump before making any judgments. Our Susana Pinto will be traveling to Rome to cover their first meeting. And those aren't the only remarks the Pope made on his return flight from Fatima. He also commented on Medjugorje, the shrine in southern Bosnia. The Pope told reporters that he has doubts about the apparition, saying Mary is, quote, not the Madonna of the post office, who delivers a message every day at a set hour. Citing his personal opinion, Francis added, these presumed apparitions are not worth much. And the Pope is back at the Vatican days after welcoming the newest saints in the Catholic Church at a Mass in Fatima, Portugal. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims gathered in front of one of the world's most important Catholic shrines. Our Lady first appeared in Fatima 100 years ago. Pilgrims spent days before the Pope's arrival in quiet prayer, reciting rosaries leading up to the key moment of the celebration.
E definimos como santos os beatos Francisco Marto y Jacinta Marto.
With that declaration, 2 shepherd children who saw the Marian apparitions joined the roster of Catholic saints, siblings Francisco and Jacinta Marto.
Amazing. It's like an answer to prayer, because I felt always that they would be canonized.
At the end of the Mass, the Holy Father waved a white handkerchief, a Fatima tradition, as he said farewell to the statue of Our Lady of Fatima. On the spot of the apparitions 100 years before, the 2-day trip for Pope Francis came to an end. Pope Francis reflected on that trip to the Marian Shrine of Fatima during his weekly prayer at the Vatican yesterday.
A Fatima mi sono immerso nella preghiera del Santo Popolo Fedele.
The Holy Father says he was immersed in the prayer of the faithful in Fatima, where prayer has flowed like a river for 100 years. He thanked God for allowing him to go to the feet of the Virgin Mother as a pilgrim of hope and peace. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin was in Fatima for the pilgrimage and joins us now from Rome. Mary, how would you summarize the Pope's message during this trip?
Basically, Lauren, he stuck to the message of Fatima during his entire visit, the message of peace and conversion. We have to remember that these apparitions happened 100 years ago at the beginning of the century that would be one of the bloodiest in history, a century that would see more Christian martyrs than all centuries before it combined. So the Holy Father spoke about in his homily that Our Lady was here to warn us about a way of life that is godless, one that profanes God in his creatures, a lifestyle, Lauren, that he said risks leading us to hell. But the emphasis was on prayer and mercy, and the emphasis was on Mary as our mother, who is here to invite her children to pray and lead a life of conversion.
During the canonization Mass, there was a really special moment that wasn't on the program. Tell us about it.
Lauren, that was the offertory when a family brought up the gifts of bread and wine. They were brought up by Lucas Baptista and his family. Lucas was the little boy who was healed, whose miraculous healing led to the canonization of the 2 Fatima visionaries. It was a beautiful moment to see them bringing up the gifts as a family and the Pope embracing young Lucas. Before then, we had never seen his face. We only learned his name the Thursday before the Pope landed in Portugal, when his parents very emotionally recounted their stories to members of the press who were there, who recalled that the doctors had given their son no hope after falling 21 feet from a window, that only a few days later saw him walk out of that hospital with no signs of injury.
What did the Pope say about these 2 new saints?
Well, as always, popes hold up saints as examples, and he said that Saints Francisco and Jacinta were saints that we should emulate in their hope and perseverance in the face of great suffering. Lauren, we were also able to catch up with one of the American cardinals who were there, and I think the only American cardinal who made it to Fatima for this event, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, who said that these children are an example for us all to emulate.
There's a great lesson in this, and all the saints' lives are sermons for us, but in these children it's a reminder that how precious children are and that they too are called to sanctity.
Saints Francisco and Jacinta are the youngest saints in the church to be declared saints without having suffered martyrdom. Lauren?
Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Welcome back to Rome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Coming up, President Trump honors fallen officers.
The attacks on our police must end, and they must end right now.
And the gift of adoption. One of our regular contributors shares how it changed her life and family. President Trump pays tribute to the brave souls who sacrificed their lives in the line of duty and calls for an end to violence against police officers.
The attacks on our police are a stain on the very fabric of our society, and you are entitled to leadership at the highest level that will draw a bright, line in the sand. The attacks on our police must end, and they must end right now.
The president spoke at the annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service today at the U.S. Capitol. He added it's time to work with our cops and not against them. The month of May is a time to reflect on motherhood and the blessing of adoption as one path to becoming a mom. It's a topic very close to my heart and close to the heart of our guest, Dr. Grazie Christie, Policy Advisor for the Catholic Association, mother to 5, and one of them is adopted.
That's right.
Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So your youngest is adoption. You say that adoption is the best thing that you ever did, but you talk about how it's different from having biological children. What do you mean?
You know, when we adopt, the whole physical, hormonal part, the part that connects us so deeply physically to our children, that part is absent. But in its place, we have a very deep spiritual connection. And it's a beautiful process that coming together, the mother and the child, and the father and the child.
But you say, you talk about the divine. What do you mean by the divine and how adoption is divine?
Well, you know, after I adopted and I got to know that beautiful process, you know, from the inside out, I started reading about it, and I realized that, like people know who know theology, that we are God's children through adoption, that this is a process that He takes with each one of us by choice. He chooses us and adopts us. So if that process is so grace-filled, then to participate in it ourselves with our adopted children is a beautiful thing.
In a recent article you wrote about your daughter, it was just lovely. You said, the space that separated her good from my good and my happiness from her happiness disappeared. I learned to love the other better than I loved myself, and this joyful motion to intimacy was a journey enabled by grace. When you say the other, describe what you mean by the other.
When we adopt a child, we are given a child that doesn't actually belong to us, right? He or she is given to us. And there's a separation between us, a physical separation. And then the child and the parents become one. And that is a beautiful process, a motion to intimacy. And I think that is the way that God calls each of us to become intimate with Him.
You know, you adopted your daughter. You have written this beautiful article about it. What has this taught you about God and God's love?
Well, I say when people ask me about adoption, I say that my daughter is proof that God loves me.
Because somehow, some way, you were connected together.
Yeah. And she is such a perfect gift that He must love me very much to have given me that gift.
And you were telling me a little bit about your story, that she's from China, and that she was, when you wanted to adopt, actually just assigned to you.
That's right. The Chinese government assigned her to me, and to my husband, of course, to her father.
Sure, and that, as a result, really just shows you the miracle of life.
I was telling you earlier that all our children are miraculous, because I have children by biology also, and they're miraculous. But when you have an adopted child, the miracle takes on all sorts of extra meaning. You know, the improbability of this union is so crazy that it must be from God.
It must be. Thank you so much, Dr. Grazie Christie, Policy Advisor for the Catholic Association. Up next, private school pick, where President Trump's 11-year-old son will attend classes in the fall. And Chris Ulmer tells me about special books for special kids, his inspiring outreach to children with special needs. We now know where President Trump's 11-year-old son will attend school in the fall. First Lady Melania Trump says Barron will go to St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Potomac, Maryland, about 15 miles north of the White House. Tuition at the private school can cost as much as $40,000. And Barron plans to move to the White House with his mother this summer. They originally stayed in New York so Barron could finish the school year. A special education teacher is using Facebook to help children with special needs tell their story.
Now, I have to ask, once you made the team, did you look at all those people who scoffed and go, ha ha?
Yes, I did. I was like, that was the biggest thumb and nose, like, to all those people that said, no, you can't do that. That was so fun.
The Facebook page Special Books for Special Kids now reaches more than 15 million people in 115 countries. Joining us now is Chris Ulmer, the founder of Special Books by Special Kids. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's clear one thing up. These are not books, they are videos. And I understand that the reason that you kept the title is because it was supposed to be books.
It was. I was going to write these books with the students in my special education class so that our community could better understand them, but it was denied by 50 publishers. So without thinking about it, we made a Facebook page with the same name.
Okay.
Looking back, I should have made a special videos by special kids at that point, but we just rolled with it and kept going.
Okay, well, these kids are absolutely amazing. And I can't believe that actually 50 people denied this, but let's get to the kids. You've said you don't edit out things that can be very emotionally charged and difficult to watch. Why do you do that?
Because that is reality. And when you see reality, it becomes your norm. And when something becomes your norm, you accept it. And that's what we want to promote, acceptance.
And you talk about the whole family, parents and siblings. Let's listen to a clip between two siblings.
Is there anything special about your sister?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
That she plays with me. That you play with me.
Tell me what impresses you about these families.
Well, let's take that clip, for example. She plays with me. That's what makes her special. It's just so interesting to hear the diversity of answers. Sometimes it will be something as simple as she plays with me. Other times it will be the depth of her mind and the philosophical line she comes up with. The extent of diversity that's reflected in the human species is no different when you have a diagnosis. That doesn't change, and we need to respect that.
You have such an amazing connection with these kids. What has inspired you to do this?
Just back in that classroom when I was a special education teacher, I had the same 7 students for 3 years, and I grew to understand them. And I didn't at first, but after taking time to listen and observe, I could see how funny, how intelligent they were, and I wanted the world to see.
Well, what's been the reaction?
We reach, on an average week, 15 million people. So it's grown beyond any of my expectations, and that's exponential. It grows and grows more every month. So we're just rolling with it.
And you know what, Chris? I have a feeling that somewhere out there is someone who is going to publish that original book, Special Books by Special Kids. Good luck to you, Chris Ulmer, the founder of Special Books by Special Kids.
Thank you.
That does it for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're going to leave you tonight with more video of the Pope's trip to Fatima. Good night and God bless.